My daughter needed a kidney transplant and I wasn't a match, neither was my husband. The doctor looked at both of us strangely before quietly asking if either of us had ever done a paternity test. My husband laughed it off as a stupid question. I didn't laugh. I remembered a night 11 years ago I'd spent months trying to forget, and suddenly I couldn't breathe in that hospital hallway. I ordered the test secretly, terrified of what it might confirm, more terrified of what it might destroy. 3 days later, sitting alone in my car outside the lab, I opened the results. My husband wasn't her biological father. I'd known this was possible, buried it for 11 years, convinced myself the timeline didn't add up cleanly enough to matter. It mattered now more than anything ever had. Our daughter's kidney failure was genetic, the doctors explained, inherited from a biological parent whose medical history we'd never had access to. I needed to find her real father, not for our marriage, not for old feelings, but because his blood type, his family history, might be the only thing standing between her and years of dialysis while waiting for a stranger's donation. I hadn't spoken to him in over a decade. Mark had been a brief, complicated chapter I'd sealed away completely after marrying my husband, never imagining that chapter would resurface holding my daughter's survival in its hands. I found him through a mutual friend, explained everything in a voice that barely sounded like mine, and waited for him to simply hang up on a stranger's chaos. He didn't hang up. He listened in complete silence, then said quietly, "I have a daughter I've never met." Not anger, not denial, just quiet grief for 11 lost years he hadn't known existed. He agreed to testing immediately, no hesitation, no conditions. 2 weeks later, we learned he wasn't just compatible for information, he was an actual match for the transplant itself. Telling my husband was the hardest conversation of my life. I expected rage, screaming, the end of everything we'd built together. Instead, he sat motionless at our kitchen table for nearly 10 minutes before asking one devastating question. "Does this mean you love her less as my daughter?" I realized then he wasn't grieving betrayal. He was grieving the fear of losing his daughter twice. We told our daughter together, gently, carefully, watching her 11-year-old face struggle to process biology versus the only father she'd ever known and loved completely. She looked between us and asked simply, "Can I have two dads?" Something in that question dissolved months of tension instantly. Family, she taught us in that moment, was never something biology alone got to define. The transplant surgery was scheduled for 6 weeks later, Mark flying in from across the country, staying in our guest room like an awkward, grateful stranger, slowly becoming family. My husband drove him to every pre-op appointment personally, the two men forming a strange, unspoken alliance built entirely around one shared priority, keeping our daughter alive regardless of complicated history. The night before surgery, I overheard them talking quietly in the garage, voices low but no longer hostile. Mark admitted he'd spent years wondering if he'd made the right choice staying silent back then. My husband told him bluntly that the choice didn't matter anymore, only showing up now did. I stood in the doorway crying, watching two imperfect men finally choose the same thing. The surgery succeeded completely, watching my daughter wake up in recovery, groggy but alive, flanked by both men who loved her fiercely for entirely different reasons. I understood something I couldn't have grasped 11 years earlier. Secrets don't stay buried to protect people. They just delay the moment those people discover exactly how much love was always available to them. Mark visits twice a year now, not as a replacement father, simply as an addition to a family that grew stranger and stronger than either man expected. My husband still tucks her in every night. Some inheritances aren't hidden letters or storage units. Sometimes they're second chances neither parent saw coming. Who do you think showed more strength here? Comment below and subscribe for more true emotional family stories.